Should I start? Just let me know. Okay. Good morning, everybody. And firstly, I'd just like to thank VTU for giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you today, and to all of you who have come here to listen to me. Today, my topic is going to be on entrepreneurship and whether entrepreneurship could be a career option, and I'd like to discuss that with you, and I'd like to make this discussion very interactive, so hopefully you can hear me clearly, and please feel free to stop me at any time and do ask questions, and hopefully we'll make this interactive. Also, a little bit apologies for coming a little late. It just got stuck in usual Bangalore traffic, but I hope to make up and take you through the lecture. The agenda or the learning outcomes that I hope to achieve today are threefold. Number one, share with you what is entrepreneurship really, how do you define an entrepreneur, and what do you really call a person. We hear this term a lot today. We find entrepreneurs all over. You just look around you will find enterprising people who do their own business. So I will share with you what in my experience is an entrepreneur. Secondly, we'll discuss firstly, is really entrepreneurship a career option? And there are a few questions you need to ask yourself, because really something that you have to find out, and it's a process of discovering oneself as to the person can be an entrepreneur or not. And so that's a few questions we will discuss with you as to whether how do you decide whether entrepreneurship is really an option for you as a student and as a fresh graduate in the near future. And finally, I've had the privilege of being an entrepreneur myself with three other co-founders, where I started my own outsourced product development company, and now have the opportunity to also work with a much larger company by the name of ExcelSoft, which we are part of now, which is an e-learning and training company. So I'd like to share a little bit about, how do you really start to become an entrepreneur. And I think that entrepreneurship starts very early, and what are the things that you need to do to really sow the seed if you'd like to become an entrepreneur. So that's really the three outcomes that I'd like to share with you today, the objectives rather, and hopefully I'll be able to take you through. And once again, please feel free to stop me at any point and ask questions. Okay, so the first topic for today is what is entrepreneurship and who is really an entrepreneur. So very simply put, an entrepreneur is also known as a founder, someone who really starts off a business, and this is someone who is in position, not be a complete owner of the business, but he is kind of accountable for a particular venture or an enterprise. And the key thing here is not about just owning a business or possessing a business, but actually the key thing about an entrepreneur is that he is accountable for the inherent risk that exists in a startup. You've probably heard that one of the key things about starting your own business is the inherent risk and the risk that the entrepreneur has to take on various levels, and I will discuss that shortly. And that is something that in my opinion kind of defines what an entrepreneur is all about. And so he's accountable both and has to take the ownership of the risk as well as the outcome that comes out of it. So that's really how you will define an entrepreneur, a founder. So how does an entrepreneur typically go about doing this? So it usually starts off by identifying a market problem and a market opportunity or a problem, where the entrepreneur who has an area of expertise, or he has a sense that, hey, this is something that could be unique and there's a market opportunity, you identify it and you can think that you have a solution to offer to that problem. So that's really how really an entrepreneur would start. And this could be done right from scratch. You can start a business completely from scratch. You could even, there are entrepreneurs who after working experience and who have been in various companies can also, for example, purchase another company or take over a company that is not doing really well. Those are also entrepreneurs. As by definition they will also be called entrepreneurs. You could also franchise a business. Franchise, an example is you take the popular McDonald's, KFC, or the Coffee Day. These brands then offer business owners and entrepreneurs to franchise their brand and set up their own retail using the same brand. That's also an example of entrepreneurship. Or also you must remember that companies, even if you take up a normal job in a corporation today, lots of these companies are very entrepreneurial in nature. They actually like their employees to think of entrepreneurial ideas that can help their business grow strategically and actually support employees towards this. They even go to the extent of having corporate funds that are set aside for such people who are entrepreneurial in nature and who would like to start off something. And they provide, for example, even within the comfort of the company, an incubation, and then you can spin off to start off your own company where you could be a founder and an entrepreneur and a part owner of the business as well. So that's really a very simple definition of who is an entrepreneur, what do you call the person, and how does it typically start. Always starts off by thinking that okay, there is a problem or an opportunity in the marketplace that has been identified, and then the entrepreneur goes out to actually solve that problem and offer a service and create value to the end customer. So that is really how typically an entrepreneur goes out to start his journey. So that's the kind of what I wanted to share you on what is entrepreneurship. Once again, just wanted to request if there are any questions, please let me know. I hope I'm audible and you're able to hear the first slide. Okay, so moving on. The question, so we've talked about what is an entrepreneur. Now the question that I think everyone, and I think the earlier you ask this question is important, and hopefully that's what I'm trying to do today, is to really ask yourself, can I be an entrepreneur? So how do you really answer this question? So what I would like to do to answer this question is that, well, if someone were to ask me firstly, can someone be an entrepreneur, or can a fresh graduate be an entrepreneur? The short answer is, it depends. It really depends on the person, and how do we identify whether this thing is. The best thing to do is really to read about other entrepreneurs, read about what traits and what qualities you kind of require to be an entrepreneur, because this is it's not an easy question to answer. Like I said, it's a process of discovery, of getting to know oneself as to what the qualities you have as well as what the qualities will be required to become an entrepreneur. So I've tried to list down a few of these qualities that kind of make an entrepreneur. So some of the qualities or traits, I think the first and foremost, and I think I also alluded to this in the previous slide, is the risk-taking mentality. The entrepreneur, when you decide to start your own business, has to take risks on I would say probably three different dimensions. Firstly, personally, you need to take some risk. For example, you need to, for a period of time, say that my work and my business is top priority, and for example, sometimes your family members and loved ones might feel that you're giving too much time to your business. So that's kind of a risk you have to take a little bit and manage the relationship with your family when you decide. Secondly, the risk that an entrepreneurship takes is professionally. Even despite the downturn today, yes, for fresh graduates probably it is definitely a lot harder today to find a job, but even with that said, you do not have the job security going into starting something on your own. So that's something you should be comfortable with, and you should be able to internalize and say that this is something okay, even from a professional point of view. And then also entrepreneurs take risks financially. Because people who really believe in the idea are willing to put their savings, are willing to put the hard-earned money, and typically the most common source of actually getting funds for your startup or for your venture is through friends and family, because these are people who trust you. These are people who really want you to succeed, and they believe in you, and they are probably the easiest people to get some startup funds. So that's also a risk that an entrepreneur actually takes. So that's really something that I feel is very important trait for an entrepreneur that you need to ask yourself. And even like I said, even if you do not have the mentality in terms of risk taking, you feel that you need kind of a job security and everything, there's always ways to work with an entrepreneur, right? I think because first time entrepreneurship is always very hard. There's a very thin line between failure and success, which we will also talk about, which is also something that an important trait that an entrepreneur should have. So even if you feel that you do not have the risk-taking mentality and don't want to do this, there are various ways to learn about entrepreneurship, and I will share that through my experience through the next slides. So that's one of the first traits. Along with that, you need to be comfortable with it's like a roller coaster, the journey that you're going to make. Just like in life, I believe, is also a roller coaster. Similarly, you will have a roller coaster within your business as well, and you need to be comfortable with that, be able to deal with all of the uncertainties that will happen, and take failure, pick up, learn from your mistakes, and go on. And this leads into the second point. The other important thing about an entrepreneur is that you would like to learn quickly, especially for a first time entrepreneur. People like yourself, people like me who have come out fresh graduates and trying to start their own business, you will definitely need to be able to have and be ready to learn quickly, and also have the confidence that this is something you can do, and that will very, very help you throughout the learning process and throughout the risk taking process. Another thing, and this is, I think, will go to whether you're an entrepreneur or not, and this is something that I feel is common, which is that an entrepreneur values independence, values success. Everyone wants to be successful. Everyone wants to be in their own small way or big way. They want to be successful, and that is something an entrepreneur really, really values. And excitement. Like I said, a roller coaster is up and down, but the key thing of why do people go to be on a roller coaster? That is really to be have an exciting and thrill time. So if that is something you enjoy, and don't really worry about what the end goal is in terms of failure or success, because I said it's a very thin line. Because there, lots of companies can just go down. Companies today that are read in the press are those that are bought out for a lot of money, or who go public, and basically money is the one that seems to be the end goal that the press will talk about. But through that process, you will have a lot of excitement, a lot of learning, a lot of relationships that you build with your team members and the customers alike. So that is something that is something that an entrepreneur values, and I think everyone will. So that's something that's common, and that's good. And finally, another thing that similar to the excitement, the entrepreneur really has the pride and is very, very happy in building something of his own. So that's really you meet entrepreneurs today. It's not really about the end goal, like I mentioned. It's not about for example, making yourself monetarily successful, but it is also about making something that is useful, that is what that gives you the really the job satisfaction. As you say, at the end of the day, when you go to a job, you will quickly realize, when I finished myself as a student, we were looking at the job prospects. We were always looking for the most paying job. I mean, typically, always my mind would be, okay, what would be the one that would pay me the most, so that I can brag to the rest of my people that I have a very good paying job and things like that. But you very quickly realize that it's not money is one thing, but it really it depends from person to person, but it is not in the longer term not something that will get you the satisfaction to make you keep you motivated and passionate throughout the entire process. So that satisfaction of building a company or building a product or service is very, very important trait, and I think again at various levels people have this. And finally, I'd also like to state here, which I wanted to share before I talk about, how do you learn to be an entrepreneur now that we've understood what the kind of values are. You must remember that entrepreneurship are of various types. It needn't be, for example, taking all the risk, putting your hard-earned savings into a venture. It could be of various types. At the end of the day, you should understand what you're passionate about or what your area of expertise is to start up, because there are various kinds of entrepreneurships. There could be even social entrepreneurship today. So today I meet social entrepreneurs where the end goal is not to create a product or service, for example, that is valued in the marketplace, but it has a very large social and environment outcome. So that is also something that a lot of people are getting into today, and even that does not need to be non-profit, mind you. A social entrepreneur, sometimes people say, is towards non-profit organization, but that's not really true. You can be a social entrepreneur and have a significant social and environmental benefit in the society, but you need not be a non-profit organization as well. So there are various types of the business entrepreneur, which is the more typical entrepreneur, as well as the social entrepreneur is something that you should also consider, and that really means that entrepreneurships are of various types. Here in India, you see people who are, you could say, sole proprietorship or business owners. They take over the family business, and people will argue. There's a lot of debate you can have whether, for example, the next generation kin, the son or the daughter inheriting the family business, is that person really an entrepreneur or not? Well, that question is open to debate, but at the end of the day, it's really up to the individual what he wants to do with the business. Yes, you're right that he's getting an advantage and he's getting something on his plate and is able to take it, and really also has a job security as well as has the independence and ownership of a business. You're right that advantage is given, but it is up to the individual as to what he makes of it, and only if he realizes that he's in a position to exploit it will he actually enjoy the benefit of being an entrepreneur. So what we've covered till now, just to summarize what we've done, is to talk about entrepreneurship, who is an entrepreneur, and how does a typical entrepreneur start, and what are the key questions you need to ask yourself whether you can be an entrepreneur. To ask yourself. So we've listed that. As I said, it depends on the person, and there are certain key questions or certain key traits and qualities that an entrepreneur has, which I've listed here, and this is something you need to do again in introspection and ask yourself as to what are the key things. And I mentioned one of the first key thing, the most important thing really is the risk-taking mentality. That's really what just differentiates. And also finally, entrepreneurs also those who are really good and they have a vision, along with taking pride and joy in building something. They also have a vision of something, and that vision is very important. We'll talk about that later, because at the end of the day, an entrepreneur cannot build his company on his own. He needs an amazing team with him who are equally or probably and sometimes even better than the entrepreneur founder, and that's why the vision is the key to actually motivate your troops to go towards the end goal. So that's the first two kind of topics that I wanted to talk about. So entrepreneurship as a career option, like I said, it's very interactive. Hopefully you all can ask me some questions if you have so far. The next kind of 20 minutes I'd like to spend talking about how you can be an entrepreneur. What are the things I will share from my experience, some of the 7 or 8 things I've listed down, which I believe you should do towards making and becoming an entrepreneur. So that's what I'm going to take in the next part of the lecture. So the first thing that I'd like to say is that entrepreneurship starts early. And just like you are here today, listening to this lecture, I believe is the first step. You need to start thinking whether it is I understand what entrepreneurship is and whether I have the qualities, and that's really what you need to do. So it's really great that you are today listening to this and trying to figure out. Obviously you are here for a reason. You are not here just for anything. Your reason to hear what is entrepreneurship, Is it a career option for me, and how do I do it? So that's the key. It starts early. So how do you do this? How do you, okay, I'm here, so what do I do next? The first thing I would like to say is, you should expose yourself outside your class and your curriculum. This is very, very important. This is something that I had the fortune to do, and what this does is it kind of will take you out of your comfort zone, because right now if you're within your college, within your comfort zone, you do not see kind of risk-taking opportunities. You do not kind of stumble and fall. So unless and until you go out of your comfort zone and start to compete in kind of competitions or extracurricular activities, you will be kind of stuck and just remain in your comfort zone. So that is very important. And I will share with you some of the things that I have done from my experience. And what this does is that it's really about teamwork. When you go out and take part in a competition or some kind of extracurricular activities, you get the opportunity to work in the team. And this is very important because you will begin to understand what are the kind of people you like to work with, and also actually build a team that could in the future help you when you decide on what the idea want to be and sit down with a bunch of friends. You know who are the key people to pick, because like I said, you really need a team. So this slide is just to give you a sense of what I was fortunate to do when I was a student. The key thing that I did is to get out of my comfort zone. I actually had the opportunity to do my undergrad. I'm a computer engineer by training and background. So I had gone to the National Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, which have a reputed computer engineering program, and over there I got the opportunity. And this again, I mean, probably in your colleges you may not have the opportunity, but that doesn't mean you should not. You should ask your faculty, your lecturers, and even look through the web. There may not be competitions in your very own city, but I'm sure in Bangalore there are all the colleges invite. There are open invitations to all these people to come and join a business plan competition or various other kind of competitions that actually hone your skills towards this. So I think that's something that I'm sharing really from my experience as to what is the first thing you can do towards the journey of being an entrepreneur. So that's what I wanted to share as a first step. Leading in, I think you could have guessed already. Something that you really need as an entrepreneur is a good team. And again, people, for example, you talk about Microsoft. If I ask you today, name, what is synonymous with Microsoft, you will say probably Bill Gates. But probably a lot of you don't know that Microsoft also had another founder by the name of Paul Allen. Right? And also that there are various other key people who were responsible for that. So remember that some people might get all the credit, or out in the press you will read that this company is made by this person, and that is true. That person is probably the most important person and the key person who has driven the company. For example, same way Apple, you will hear about Steve Jobs and how as a one-man show he's come in, he just tweaks a little thing over here or changes one little thing over there, and the company from loss making turns into an amazing company. Yeah, that's true. You do need the direction and the leadership at the top, but at the end of the day you need a fantastic team. So always remember that if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, that you cannot build this on your own. So what you need to do is, the second point that I'm trying to say is, hang out with like-minded people, right? Right from the college days, along with taking part in all of these activities, you want to be able to get the opportunity to work with people who are like you, so that you can, because I think the friendship and the key people you hang out with defines who you are also to a lot of extent. So you want to be able to be with such people so that you can rub off ideas, discuss ideas, brainstorm, and think about the future. So, and also another this is another interesting question that people ask me. So should you start a company with your friends, or with, let's say, professionals, as long as they have expertise. I mean, it's again, it really depends. It depends on what you prefer, what you like. But the key thing is, whoever you decide to start a company with as a partner, as a co-founder, you have to be able to trust the person. Because, I mean, think about it this way. When you start a company with someone, it's like a marriage, right? I mean, you actually might be spending more time with your co-founders and with your partners than with your, let's say, your girlfriend or your wife in the future. That's how much of time and commitment it takes, and you will be, you know, if money will be involved in business, all the critical things which you require trust will be involved, and if you do not have this clear communication and trust between each other, it's bound to fail. And if you look back, people say, I don't know what the statistics are as to how many companies are successful, and I anyway said it's a thin line, but I tend to believe that whatever I've seen in recently, specifically in the Indian market, and this happens a lot, that partners between themselves, founders, end up fighting. And typically, more or less, it comes down to very, very basic things on you know, dividing money, profits, and these kind of things. So you have to be very, very clear on these things, and also be able to trust the person. You know, it's okay to have differences in opinion into how to take the company. It's always good to have a yin and a yang. Always good to have somebody who's willing to challenge your thought process, and so that you can think which is the right way to go. But trust is very important, and that's something is part of finding that good team. So remember that. Okay. Again, once again, if there are any questions, I would love to hear it. But moving on. The third point that I'd like to say is that you really need to get out there, what I call networking, because you never really know the importance of networking until you network. So you really have to get out. I'll tell you why. Because while you network, you could meet potential customers, you could meet your potential competitors, you could meet people who could probably be mentors and advisors to your business, and you really get to understand the industry. So I think from an early age itself, if you've decided this is your area of expertise, you want to focus on this, probably list out a bunch of events, try to go out, understand, meet the people, and this is where you will get out. Definitely the internet is a great way. You can always sit behind your PC and your computer and, you know, search the internet and research, but that's just one way. I think meeting people in the industry, people who are experienced, having dialogue with them, building relationship with them, networking is very, very important. And another important point that's on the slide is that this will help you validate your idea. Until and unless you go out, talk to people, make a pitch that, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, and it'll help you validate. You will get to know whether this sticks or not, whether people are liking it or not, and so forth. I also just wanted to check how much more time I have for the lecture. Is this going to end at 11? 11? Okay. So we probably just have 10 minutes. I will just try and go through the slides quickly, and so that I can keep some time for questions. This is something, again, it leads to the risk-taking mentality. You should never fear failure, because if you do, I think that's, you're already starting off on a bad note, and it's kind of bound to go down. So, and I've just trying to illustrate it with this quote, which I like to read: when the fear of failure is greater than your desire to succeed, your fate is sealed. So you really don't have any chances if you do that. So this is something that I've said it earlier also as a trait. This is something you should not be afraid of. And I think even typically in the past days, the Indian society were very against failure and would not accept them in the society. But I don't think that exists anymore today. People are willing to see what is the character of the person, what he has done, and take him for that, even though he may have actually failed in a company and, for example, goes out to find a job. So don't be worried about that. That what happens if I fail and I don't do well and I want to now get back into the professional career. I don't think people will value the experience as long as you're able to communicate to your future employer that this is what you've done, these are the skills, these are the mistakes I've made, this is what I've learned, is very important. this again goes to introspection. Entrepreneurship, you may already be on the path of it, but you still need to find out what are your weaknesses, what are your strong points, and why actually you're doing this. So either before you start, or I think these questions are asked throughout the process. Why do I really want to start the business, right? And as long as you can answer that, you have a passion, you are confident of your idea, you have that ability, just go for it, right? Am I cut out for this? I talked about job security. Is that something that you need? So you have to always kind of ask yourself these questions. Do you have a backup plan? Well, you may not have a backup plan, but you have to be ready to adapt quickly, because that's important as part of it. And can you motivate the team? Like I mentioned, having a clear direction and focus, and I will talk about that next, is important. And finally, the trust factor, that's very important. So these are some of the questions that you should ask yourself constantly. Another kind of lesson or a tip that I'd like to share is that my mentor, when I first wrote my first business plan and kind of I spoke to him, he said, what you need to do is just put away your business plan, keep it away in a storage area, or just print it out, keep it in your cupboard, and read it after a few months. And you will laugh actually after you read it, because the market would have changed so much and things change so fast. And he was right. Your plan always keeps changing. So remember that change is the only constant, and you have to use that to your advantage and don't kind of get bogged down. And finally, this is something that I've seen in my experience. When you start a company, you end up having quite a few opportunities. It may not be that you are trying to along with trying to identify the right opportunities, you also have to understand what your clear focus is and be able to create a market niche or a niche for yourself. Because getting that direction is very important. Like I've faced sometimes, we have different thoughts as to which way the company needs to go. So that is very important. And to make sure that you're focused, what I used to try and do is what I call the litmus test, is to just try and describe to your mom or your dad or to your loved one what you do. And if they can understand, and if you can explain to them in 2 sentences or 1 paragraph what exactly you're doing, I think you've been able to focus yourself and create a clear direction for yourself. So that is something important. And I think the last thing I'd like to share, which is important throughout your entrepreneurship journey, is to find a mentor. Someone, a senior who has done this before, who has been through this process, who can guide you through the process. Because sometimes you never know, business is not just about what you can do and how well you do it. It's also who you know. So as a young entrepreneur, without much contacts in the industry, you need to have this mentor and advisor who can connect you to the network, who believes in you, and who can give you the seniority and guiding throughout the thing. And finally, just very important, this is something that a lot of people fail to do when they work with a board of advisor. If you want to bring them on your company or guide and make sure you recognize their efforts. See, I mean, when you start off your company, you can't really probably do it in terms of monetary money and whatever, but make sure you recognize them by giving them, for example, set aside an X% of your company as equity to, for example, the board of advisors and mentors. And that goes to the same for all your key employees. You need to set aside that portion of your company so that they feel owners in the company, and they feel that their own skin is in the game, and they have the ownership that this is their baby. Until and unless they feel this is their baby and they have to take care and grow it, that feeling will not come, and that's very important. So same with a mentor. When you find a person, you need to make sure you recognize their efforts, and the best way is to kind of give them ownership and make them feel part of the company. So I think that has come to the end of what I wanted to share. Just to summarize what we've gone through today in terms of the learning objectives as a summary. Number 1, we talked about who is an entrepreneur, what is entrepreneurship, and you can go through that, and I don't know if you have any questions on that. Secondly, how do I know that whether I can be an entrepreneur? And I told you that it depends on certain qualities. And I have shared with you my experience as well as some of the things that you can do to start early and to begin the journey of entrepreneurship. Finally, to continue your quest, your discovery process of being an entrepreneur, there are a couple of recommended readings. This is something that I've summoned. Guy Kawasaki, The Art of the Start. This gentleman was the one of the key people in the company Apple. He today runs Garage Technology Ventures, which is like a incubation fund that helps startups with advice as well as angel money. Angels, as the word goes, is someone who is very good to you, is someone who typically is a high net worth individual and gives you funds to help you start. So that's what Guy Kawasaki is, and he's written about The Art of the Start. Very fun read, very simple book to read. The other thing I'd encourage you to do is read about entrepreneurs, other entrepreneurs in the world today. Through their journeys, you will get inspired, you will understand what the traits are and whether you're cut out for that, and how you want to even work with one of them to do that. So there's a book by this lady called Shamana Mitra. You can again probably go to Google, go to the internet search and check it out. It's called Entrepreneur's Journey, so that's a recommended reading. And an action item, more than this is a reading, an action item. If you want to take this and create something right in your college, what I would recommend you to do is go to this site called the nenonline.org, the National Entrepreneurship Network. This is started, is funded, it's a non-profit organization purely focused on entrepreneurship, early stage people like you and me who are college graduates, and to help them to become entrepreneurs. They set up something called e-cells, entrepreneurship cells in various colleges, and actually provide you the guidance and support on how you can do all of this. It is funded by the Vadvani Foundation. Professor Vadvani is a very successful Indian entrepreneur, again based in Silicon Valley, and he started this here in India. All the good colleges that you would have probably heard in Bangalore are now setting up e-cells, and this is something I'll encourage. Just go out. It's a student initiative, without any effort from faculty and support. You can go out, talk to them, and get going. So this is something that I would recommend. So I think that kind of comes to the end of what I wanted to share with all of you. I have put my email address on the screen. I absolutely welcome emails from each and every one of you if we didn't have the opportunity to take questions today. So please email me. Please email me if you'd like to read more, become an entrepreneur, even join our company. As I said, we're a very entrepreneurial company, and we always have positions for exciting engineers, young graduates in all fields. And would love to hear from you. So look forward to hearing from you, and you have any questions, probably a couple of minutes left, I can even take that. So once again, thank you so much for your time, and I really look forward to your feedback and questions. Thank you. Okay.